When you have a series as big as Steven Universe, a series that prides itself on its overarching story, its expansive world building and lore, combined with a dedicated, engaged, and very analytical audience, it's only a matter of time before viewers construct their wish list of things they want to see in the series. Things that they feel are inevitable to happen. And almost always, somewhere on these wish lists, we'll see one thing that unfortunately may never happen. The hope of seeing Steven physically age up. Let's talk about that today on Crystal Clear. Before we dive in, I just want to remind you guys we have a bunch of designs back up on our Teespring. I'm Always Feeling Blue, the Diamond Crashers, Bingo Bongo, Roundtable Black and Blue, Retro Primo, and so much more. And now you can also become a member of the channel. You'll get a nice little badge next to your name and access to custom emojis. Links to both the channel membership and the Teespring in the description. If you're on desktop, you can hit the join button. Welcome back to Crystal Clear on the Roundtable. I'm AwestruckVox, and I wish we could just see Steven age. I mean, sure, he's aging in the passage of time. With each episode, he grows older and older, but physically, more or less, he's still the same as he was in episode 1. Now, we do have evidence of him growing en masse. For example, in the episode Too Short to Ride, Steven makes a remark to Paradigm that he outgrew his old shoes.
I've harnessed the power of your interlocking fabric strips.
Good thing I grew out of those shoes.
Meaning that even if we don't notice, he is growing, but fans want something more along the lines of what we were given in the episode Steven's Birthday. This, and the previous episode in Season 1, So Many Birthdays, gave insight on how Steven, a half-organic, half-gem being, would age over the course of the series. Steven's physical growth is reflective of how old he feels mentally. When he emotionally matures, and feels that he's grown older, in theory, Steven's appearance would progress as well, and we could get something akin to how he appeared in Steven's Birthday, when he was forcing himself into maintaining an older appearance, complete with a deeper voice, closer to how Zach Carlson naturally speaks. Again, when you have an analytical fanbase on the scale of Steven Universes, everything is going to be taken as foreshadowing. So I'm sure in the minds of many, Steven's birthday was a taste of things to come down the road. However, it's been quite a bit of time since that episode aired. And so many events have occurred, so much time has passed in the series ever since then. Yet, Steven doesn't look any older. And he's definitely gone through enough to emotionally mature. So why hasn't he? Why haven't we received an aged up Steven? When are we going to see an aged up Steven? Well, the truth is, we may never get that. It's very likely that Steven will never age. At least, not in the sense that we would have, let's say, 2 or 3 seasons of an aged up Steven. Something near the end of the series, maybe even a final season, or a final arc, or even just a final episode. That's a bit more feasible. But why? Why would the Crewniverse deny Steven of that crucial development? Well, it's actually something out of the Crewniverse's control. The issue with physically aging up Steven goes beyond Steven Universe itself. Arguably, it goes beyond Cartoon Network. And it's nothing to do with storytelling, but with marketing. With merchandise. The toys, the Funko Pops, the keychains, the t-shirts. How the show is promoted. Allow me to explain. The main character of a series needs to be recognizable by the general audience. Thus, they need to stay consistent. So, throughout all of media, it's often considered bad practice to drastically change the appearance of said main character, or even cast of main characters. This is why, especially in Western media, the design of characters never evolve. The status quo typically remains the same. Look at South Park. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, Kenny, the rest of their class, they've been in 4th grade forever. Despite this, the show continues to portray current events. And it even has some pretty tight continuity. Well, when it wants to. Yet despite the years constantly changing, and always taking place in modern day, they never have, and likely never will, give a justification for why everyone is still in 4th grade and has not aged in years, since the season they've been put in 4th grade. Or even Family Guy. The biggest status quo change that show has had was Cleveland leaving, and that's because he got his own spin-off series. Sure, they have stunts like killing off Brian, but he was back in no time. And again, and while that story arc has often been labeled as a ratings tactic, that also probably has a great deal to do with marketing. promotion, and keeping the status quo. And that'll make sense in a few seconds. But to just name a few other properties, Gumball, SpongeBob, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, you get the idea. The main characters of all these series and pretty much any Western cartoon you can think of tends to remain the same age. Of course there are exceptions, but those exceptions go hand in hand with the reason main characters and status quo usually never changes in these cartoons. When you drastically alter the design of a main character and make them noticeably older, or add a new defining feature to their appearance, suddenly everything revolving around the show has to change. How it's marketed, how it's promoted, how the general audience perceives and consumes it. So, back on the topic of Steven Universe, if they did age up Steven and made him noticeably older, gave him a neck and everything, the marketing materials for the show would now have to update and reflect that age up Steven. The promotionals you see, the stock images that's on all the merchandise, the main website, even the thumbnails on Hulu and Netflix, the merchandise, the Funko Pops, new versions would have to be released to reflect Steven. Now, not only would that be a time-consuming process, it would be an expensive process. So much money would have to go into updating all of these materials, all this merchandise. Suddenly, the same 3 stock images of Steven have to be replaced with new stock images. This also goes hand in hand with Gem Regeneration. When Pearl, Garnet, Amethyst, Bismuth, pretty much any character you can think of reforms, it's never anything amazingly drastic. They tend to retain their same color schemes, and you can still recognize that character. The regenerations function nothing more as a costume change. But even you can see the effect that has had on merchandise, because most merchandise for Amethyst, who was the last one to get her regeneration, still tends to portray her first or second appearance in the series. Her third and latest regeneration is still being slowly integrated into merchandise 2 years after she's achieved this look. And you may be thinking, well, what about Peridot? She had her limb enhancers, but then she got poofed and was revealed to be actually super tiny. That's a drastic change in her appearance. And well, Peridot wasn't really in promotional materials and marketing, didn't really get that much merchandise until after she reformed, and was revealed to be a tiny green bean. So while there is merchandise of Limb Enhancer Peridot, it is sparse compared to the actual tiny Peridot merch. And I'm sure once her and Lapis reform, unless Hot Topic is on that light pink diamond, we probably won't see their crystal gem forms integrated into merch for quite a while. Probably as long as it took Amethyst. Although admittedly, a lot of licensing companies have stepped up their game with Steven Universe merch. So I may be eating my words on that prediction. Also, side note, once again separate from Steven Universe, this whole marketing and drastically changing a character's appearance is to be the rumored reason why Finn kept losing and regaining his arm at Adventure Time. Because if he lost his arm too early in the series, or even at the halfway point, then they would have to market the rest of the series as such. But once they were in the endgame, that final production season, they were finally able to keep the arm. Again, this is just a rumor. I don't believe seeing any actual confirmation for this, but that actually makes a lot of sense. Especially since the final version of Finn's robot arm ended up pretty similar to his actual arm as compared to the alternate versions of him, in which those robot arms seem to function more like claws for hands. But I digress. Remember how I said earlier that some animated series have exceptions to how the characters look and drastically changing them in appearance? Well, to get this right out of the way, in terms of full-out redesigns, the only thing I can really think of is American Dragon Jake Long, and the replacements. I'm sure I'm missing more, but those two specifically are Disney series. For those second seasons, you saw they had to update everything revolving around the show. But also, that's Disney. They have the money. Cartoon Network is a lot poorer and cheaper in comparison. But anyways, let's say they did want to age up Steven. Let's say they wanted to have a full-on time skip and age up Connie, Greg, all the other humans. Then they would likely have to do what other franchises do, and a practice commonly found in anime. Steven Universe would no longer be Steven Universe. It would have to be classified as a new brand, a new series. The biggest example of this that I can think of in relation to Western media is Ben 10. When the crew decided to age up Ben, give him a brand new Omnitrix, 10 brand new aliens, and age up the rest of the supporting cast, they created Ben 10 Alien Force and later Ben 10 Ultimate Alien. You also saw this applied to Ben 10 Omniverse, although that general premise was kind of weird. Ben was 16, but also 11, there was 2 timelines. But the biggest way they differentiated that was a complete shift in art style. Moving on to anime though, typically, especially with shonen manga, whenever a time skip comes into the story, which sees the characters drastically aging up, and even the addition of new characters, you'll usually find that the anime adaptation will differentiate the time skip from what came before it. For example, Naruto. The manga is just called Naruto from beginning to end, but once the time skip came into play, Naruto aged up, got significantly taller, his clothes were no longer as baggy on him, and everyone else around him grew, and we had new antagonists, new abilities, new places to go. The Naruto anime ended, and they launched Naruto Shippuden for Dragon Ball. While Goku did age up for the final arc of the anime, and so did Gohan later in Z, the huge time skip between the end of Dragon Ball and the beginning of the Saiyan arc saw the birth of Dragon Ball Z. Now, oddly enough, One Piece never rebranded after its time skip, although to be fair, while all the characters have changed in design, it isn't anything as drastic as the aforementioned. Like honestly, the most that really changed was Sanji's facial hair. But even then, all the promotional and marketing material for the series did update to reflect that time skip. The point of all of this, however, they're all classified as different IPs, which means for Ben 10, for Naruto, for Dragon Ball, they don't need to update a single thing for their marketing materials, for their promotionals, for their merchandise. 10-year-old Ben 10 is still 10-year-old Ben 10. That Omnitrix is still that Omnitrix. The logo is still unchanged. While Ben 10 Alien Force, that 15-year-old Ben, or a time skip Naruto, or adult Goku, those are all under their different IPs, with their own separate marketing material. Are you getting the big picture? It's arguably easier and more profitable to rebrand your franchise as a new series in order to keep the older design, the older appearance of your main character, while capitalizing and profiting off the new one. Now, while I'm pretty sure Ben 10 and Ben 10 Alien Force were actually produced as separate series, I know Ben 10 Ultimate Alien was still produced as Alien Force, at least for the first season. And again, it was rebranded for marketing purposes. So if Steven Universe wanted to have a time skip, wanted to age up Steven, and finally have him grow in appearance, while it's not a guarantee, they more than likely would have to rebrand this series as something new entirely. Something like Steven Universe Crystal. This was also done for the 2003 TMNT series. Once they went to the future, they rebranded as TMNT Fast Forward. So you still had the original TMNT merch, but then you also had merch for Fast Forward, since that was a new status quo, a new setting, and physical alterations to the characters. And then when the entire Fast Forward story arc was over, they rebranded as TMNT Back to the Sewers. And now the same rules don't really apply to side characters, which is likely how the network was a-okay with them changing Lars, since he's not really the face of the show like Steven, Garnet, Amethyst, Pearl, Peridot, and if anything, he's slightly more marketable now. Ultimately, guys, yes, it kind of boils down to money, but I hope this provided a better understanding and kind of lower your expectations for a bit. Again, I could be wrong. Cartoon Network could be all for aging us Steven, but looking at the bigger picture, it almost feels as if Steven's birthday was giving us a reason for why we will never see Steven age up until likely the end of the series, instead of planting the seeds for that to happen down the road, because I mean, after everything this boy has been through, after the explanation we were given, he should be like 6'2" by now. What do you guys think? Do you want to see Steven aged up? Was this episode of Crystal Clear insightful into other series? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet them to me at AwestruckVox or at Roundtable Vids. We're also on Instagram. If you want to support the Roundtable and help us grow, you can become a member of this channel or check us out on Patreon. Links to both in the description, or you can hit the join button. If you enjoyed this video, please order a like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications, stay in the loop with all things Steven. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. AwestruckVox, out.